The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and a really warm welcome to our webinar this afternoon. We're going to be sharing with you our thoughts on workforce training needs across the country. I'm Wendy Wheel, I'm the Director of Interface, and I'm joined by my colleague Claire, who's the Training Manager for Interface. We're really pleased that you've joined us. Thank you very much. At the moment you can probably see us on webcams because we've got them turned on, but as we carry on we're going to turn them off quite shortly because it's quite distracting as you're trying to watch PowerPoint and listen to us at the same time. But I just thought it's nice for you to put a face to the name so that you know who it is that's talking to you. So I'm going to turn them off now and we'll carry on with the webinar. So some of you might well be new to online technology, so I'm just going to take a few moments to explain how we manage it. Because there's quite a few of you dialing in, I'm just going to take a few, go through a few tips at the side. If you wouldn't mind just raising your hand with the hand icon in the panel at the bottom right hand side, just so that I know that you can all hear me. The fact that you're muted doesn't mean that you can't ask questions. If you have a look, you'll see there's a chat box or a question box in the right-hand corner of the screen. By all means, put your questions in there as they occur to you, and I'll be collating them throughout the webinar. Finally, just to say, if you've got any colleagues that wanted to join us today but weren't able to, I'm actually recording this seminar and we'll make that available through the website soon. So for those of you that don't know anything at all about Interface, we are a national provider of specialist expertise, and it's all around working with complex and vulnerable families. So we provide a lot of training, information and resources, and evaluation and monitoring. I think quite a few of you do know us quite well, so you'll know that I've got a fantastic team of people. I'm really lucky to be joined by people that have got experience in running improvement programs, working directly with families and complex issues, which I think gives us a lot of credibility, research and evaluation, and workforce development. So I'll just highlight that. And just to briefly let you know that over the last, in terms of training, we've trained over 3,500 workers and managers. So I'll get on straight with the webinar and hand you over to Claire. Just to let you know that what we're going to be talking about today is what we're seeing across the country in terms of changes to practice, workforce practice, because we know that through the Troubled Families Agenda and just working with families more generally, we know that that's the most effective way to bring about sustainable change. And that means a big change for the workforce, who are now being expected to work with whole families, have a different level of conversations, work with families with more complex needs, and there's an increasing focus on outcomes and results which practitioners need to understand. So we think that that means quite a big change in terms of what is effective training across the workforce and what is the wider skill base that they need to understand. So that's what we're going to be talking to you about in no more than 30 minutes today. So I'm now going to hand over to Claire, who's just going to give you a highlight on what staff are telling us this feels like for them.
Thank you, Wendy. So some of the messages we've had from staff is staff really clearly tell us that the change to whole family working is a theory that they agree with wholeheartedly, but it has left some staff feeling de-skilled and vulnerable, so having to hold difficult conversations with parents or young people who are choosing not to engage can be a new skill for some staff, so as can recommended support services for babies and toddlers for other staff. So the change in role they may have applied for needs exploring, so although we know many skills are transferable, an opportunity to reflect on the challenges and feel that they have new skills and tools that they can build upon that will support some of their challenges and help them to problem solve as these challenges arise. So an opportunity to understand the wider political agendas that impact on their role and the support that they offer to families is really key. It's the message of this isn't just my team and my authority is doing this. We need to understand that there's a wider agenda and context here. And some time and frustrations to share their views on meeting results that they see as really key to meeting those around the outcome and management that management need. So staff talk to us a lot about wanting to celebrate those smaller, softer outcomes that they have with families and young people, but also matching those to things that might link into things like payment by results and how that works for them.
So just thinking about some key considerations for staff training and development. This is what we think it's about in terms of working with staff.
So staff feel some time away from the stress around the day job is really, really useful. That's often something that they don't come into the training room wanting, but once they have the opportunity for somebody to stand in the room with them and say, we know that this is really tough, we know that this is hard, and this is a day for you to kind of think about your work and think about moving it forward, is really, really useful for them. Networking and sharing ideas, people forever saying that they don't have time within the day role to network with other agencies, to network with other staff. Many times staff will have conversations across the room to say, I've emailed you so many times, it's the first time I've actually seen you. But the opportunity to look at how they can link together and learn new things together, share information, share ideas, share thoughts, and to reflect and consolidate on what they are doing well. We get so busy in doing what we're doing, so an opportunity to look at what's working well for us, what can we consolidate on, what can we move forward. And training should be about them feeling valued and invested in. So the message from your trainers need to be, we really value you, we want to invest in you, we want to make you the best that you can possibly be. So that message should clearly be given by your trainers to your staff.
So now thinking about key considerations around managers and organisations.
Training should be a real opportunity for your trainers to look and observe the staff blocks and enablers. So it's an opportunity in a safe space for staff to be able to comment on what's working really well and also what's getting in their way. So it's a real opportunity for them to put those down in manageable chunk sizes that can be fed back. It's much easier as a trainer in the room to challenge some of the thought processes and to challenge some of those blocks. So if staff are coming up with challenges, it's a real opportunity for a trainer to notice the challenges and record the challenges, but then also get staff to look at what would help them, so getting them to put in some problem solving around them. We know that investing in learning leads to much greater skills and much greater outputs. It's a real opportunity for those multi-agency partners to buy into your local agendas. So some staff who may be invited to your training may sit in smaller voluntary organisations or in children's centres or schools and get the information at a different level to some of the staff who may be employed within a local authority. So it's an opportunity to you to give the same message to a multi-agency of staff and to everybody to buy into more local agendas.
We know that that also leads to supporting service transformation. So for those of you that are going through a wide-scale culture change, transformation programs, the training element of it is absolutely key to that. Obviously, you've got to embed it into case management, supervision and practice. But actually, this can be really powerful in terms of transforming the service. The other thing that happens in the training room is that people are really keen to know what's going on in their next door neighbour authority or elsewhere in the country. It's really important for them to understand that they're changing and their way of working is changing, but also that they're not alone, that this is happening across the country. Lots of people are having to change the way that they work with individuals and families. So we often get questions about what another authority are doing, and we can bring that into the room. If it's us training, obviously we'll bring that into the room about best practice and what's going on across the country, which makes them feel included and that their thoughts are being shared elsewhere as well.
So some of the core skills around training, which we would always ask you to think about when you're putting in any training for your organisations, is some of those core concepts, especially around engagement and communication. So it's really difficult to get staff to go on basic engagement and communication skills training, but we know some of the training that's happening, especially around signs of safety training, around motivational interviewing, solution-focused brief therapy. Some of those real skills training will only be effective if your staff are able to engage and communicate. So if you can build in some of those core elements of positive engagement and positive communication, you will get much more out of your more specialist training. We also think around resilience, and when we think of resilience, we always immediately think of the importance of resilience around children and young people. and around the families that we work with, which is of course really important, but also factor in how resilient are your staff and your workforce. Can you build in something around that, around your training? Can you build in some time for them to think about how they're going to manage new skills around workforce when there's challenges happening, when they may have more pressing cases that are happening? How are they going to look after themselves? How are they going to use their supervision and their consultation? Thinking around assessment skills and their observations. How do we employ our staff to be much more curious around what's going on? How do they use their observations? How do they work through those? Reflection, how do we make staff be more reflective? How do we build on reflective practice? Because that will really help staff to unpick things, to unblock when they feel stuck with cases. An ability to have professional reflection is really, really important. And their focus and their drive. We've started doing some training with areas that we've been working with for quite a while around team development. So they've asked for team training, but also to include some development time. So we spent time with those teams looking at what their vision is, where they want to go forward, what their strengths are as a team, what they need as a team to move them forward even further, where they're going, what their mission statement is, and just some time to be a team together. And that's really freed them up for more learning. So if we can get some of these course concepts in place, it really makes staff feel much more confident, builds their enthusiasm, and they're much more open to learning new skills and new training.
Okay, so thinking about the sorts of things that we think you need to include in your training.
So we would always advise your trainers to use your local policies and procedures and internal referral routes. It's really difficult for staff teams to attend training that they don't feel is relevant to their individual role. We are all really busy and you're given a day out, so it needs to fit you. Your trainers will need to understand your team structures, so they'll want to know who is managed by who. If you sit within a team that has a manager available to them, or if you're in a distance team that is managed by a number of people, or you sit within two teams, you've got dual roles, it's really important that the trainer who's training your staff understands what your structures look like. The use of any internal templates and guidance documents. And I would also advise, if you don't have guidance documents and the trainer who you kind of provide is saying that they would be useful, to include some. And linking to personal and professional development. All training should be linked to their own personal and professional development. So we would always like to see certificates given at the end, so staff feel that they come away with something that they can then put onto their CV and put onto their internal personal development files. Also understanding the other training opportunities within you as an internal team. So are there things that aren't covered in this training that should be covered in other training, so you're not having the overlap? And also if we're noticing that staff have some skills gaps, that we are aware that there's an internal training that they can attend.
So now we're going to think about what this means for management and managers within an organisation, because what we've certainly seen is that staff training is only effective if it's supported and understood by direct line managers.
We would always say, if you can invite the line managers, direct line managers to the training, then always do so. Because staff will tell us consistently, why is my manager not invited to this? And where's my manager going to do this training? And will I be able to kind of fit the remit of what you're training me to do within my day role? My line manager needs to understand it. It's also useful for the trainer to understand what some of the management blocks may be and what some of the issues are. So what does the direct line manager want to get out of that training? And an understanding from staff that that information is going to be fed back, and that so managers want to hear what the issues and blocks are for them as staff, and that you as a trainer want to hear it for the delegates that are attending. It's also important that you use trainers who have done the role themselves where possible. So that gives a real credibility to the session, to have somebody standing in front of you who's telling you that you know what it feels like to knock on doors and not always feel welcome. You know what it feels like to try and engage someone who doesn't want to engage. So you understand what the blocks might be, you understand what some of their vulnerabilities might be, you understand what some of their fears might be. Making sure that it's always fit for purpose, so that link to management is really important. So are we teaching staff to work whole family and talking about small caseloads when actually their remit as a team is not to hold small caseloads, it's to hold wider caseloads. So the management buy-in is really important. So managers to see the information that any trainer is going to deliver, for the managers to have some input on what that training should look like and what the outcome they want to be.
I just wanted to talk about the communication, because it seems really obvious what I'm going to tell you, but we've seen it done spectacularly badly. So it's really important to communicate well. What is the training? What's the purpose? And what's the rationale behind this training? What is the vision that you're trying to achieve, and where does this training fit in? And then basic things like planning your program through consulting the workforce and organising it in advance. We have turned up at training sessions where you've got potentially 30 people that have turned up for what we thought was 16 people in a room that's suitable for probably 10 to 20 people. That can be really disruptive and get the training off to a poor start, to be honest. So if you've got a 12-month program, make sure that you've planned that in advance. Don't leave it till the last 6 months and then you're trying to cram people in, because then you'll get people like school teachers particularly who aren't able to get away from the classroom, or when they do, they all turn up together and you know that it's just not going to be a workable training environment. And then really basic things like thinking about the training room and whether it's suitable, and refreshments. You wouldn't believe how many people on their evaluation forms talk about the fact that the training room was too small, too dark, no window, cramped, and that we didn't even get basic refreshments. And when that comes up regularly, you do think it's quite a small thing that makes a huge difference in terms of how they feel about the training. We want them to go away from the training feeling energised, enthusiastic, can't wait to put things into practice. And those things that seem potentially quite small can have a really negative effect. So make sure you get that right in your organisation.
It's really important that we meet a range of learner needs. So there will be a room full of people who will have different learning styles. So it's important that any training that you deliver has a real mixture of ways of engaging people. So presentations are always used really around PowerPoint, but it's important that we don't do death by PowerPoint, so that kind of some PowerPoint information is really useful for those who want to read the information. Group discussions can be really important, and I think don't be scared of debate. Group debates can be really useful to look at, to be able to give you what the challenges are, give you the information as to why this is difficult, as long as that then leads to an opportunity to go, so what would help? How can we make it better? So the ability to do some small paired discussions for those quieter members of the group, and to collate some of those more private kind of thoughts and feelings that they can then share kind of in a much calmer way. So maybe put them on post-its and then sticking them so they don't have to name to them. The use of role play, I know delegates would always say they don't like role play, but it's a real opportunity to get some feeling back into this work. So an opportunity for staff to be in the role of a client is really, really useful, to know how it feels when somebody's asking you some of those difficult questions. Visual interaction, so anything you can use around videos, especially around cases. So we use lots of video clips because they really bring learning to life. Challenge and solution finding, so asking the delegates to come up with solutions to their own challenges. And takeaway learning, so make sure your trainers are very up to date on the core information, that they can advise correctly on the most up to date information for those delegates who want to go away and find out more, who want to look online, who want information to take away, so use handouts, and that there is some real key websites that they can go onto that they can find out future learning.
Okay, in terms of meeting the organisation's needs, we think that re-energising the workforce is just as important as the content. So really think hard about who your trainers are and what the content is. Make sure that they're the right people in the right place. Make sure that you use your evaluation data. It's there for a reason. If learners are saying, I want this as a 2-day course, there's not enough theory, I need to understand the theory first, or they're saying the opposite, I don't need to know the theory, just give me the tools to do the job. Listen to that and make sure that you respond to it. What we also see is that trainers, whoever they are, will get a sense in the room. You get a sense of feeling and of activity and enthusiasm, morale, etc. in the room. That's really important. If you're trying to bring around change or trying to teach new skills and there's massive resistance and they really don't want to do it, then something needs to be changed, whether that's about the vision, something that's going on with the content of the room. Make sure that your trainers can respond to it directly and hopefully that you know what that's likely to be in advance. But that's a really important skill, seeing and feeling in the room, so make sure that you pay attention to it, and if there are any concerns, that they are raised with managers. Training environments we find are a really good place to find any blocks in practice, systems and processes. That is the time when you've got out of your day job to really think about what's working well, what's not working well, and what we will do, and we hope that you would do in your own internal training, is to support workers to take ownership of that and responsibility, both for themselves and the organisation. So we might come across, I don't know, a children's centre worker that's very confident to work with 0 to 5-year-olds, doesn't want to have those challenging conversations and is finding it really difficult and is frankly really unhappy. That's the time to take personal responsibility and think about whether this is the right role for them. But if they are staying in role, it might well be that there's issues and blocks that they're finding in the organisation, and we will then talk to them about their responsibility, bringing that up at supervision, at case management, with their team. It's all about personal responsibility, which all leads to make a difference to vulnerable families, which is what we're all about. So I'm just looking to see if we've got any questions, because we're now onto the question and answer sessions. I've got a couple here which I'm going to pose to Claire. One of them actually is about resistance and examples of how you can overcome resistance for learners. So Claire, if you wouldn't mind just responding to that one.
Yeah, I think some of the things that we find really key is that there's real clear communication with the learners on what they're attending, so that the training is fit for purpose. So there's some real key things on what you call the training, what they're going to, why they're going to attend it, and also using the right trainer. So ensure that somebody understands what the difficulty might be for that certain cohort. So if it's around training for youth workers, that you have someone with a youth background that understands what their difficulties might be, and to have the confidence to allow some of the frustration to come in the room. So allow them to be frustrated, allow them to be resistant, and then support them and enable them to come up with some solutions we found really works for us.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question that I've got here is about service transformation. Do you think that you can achieve service transformation through training?
I do. We've worked with Sefton Council, where we had it was a level 4 piece of work. So it was a large piece of work. They had over 150 staff trained in the first instance, but we had multiple organisations. So we had health, social care, police, education, all working together. And the feedback from that kind of 18 months on is that they do work much closer together. They understand whole family working. They're all speaking the same language, and it has really impacted on their multi-agency working.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question from Diane here about how might some of this be different if we're training managers rather than staff, so e.g. managers who manage family intervention teams.
I think for managers there's a real need for some of it to be about what some of the issues for your staff are. So for managers it's really quite tricky. So when I've trained managers in the past, managers are being very driven about outcomes, and so the staff get lost in that. So which then means the staff feel the same about their family. So staff are coming to us for training and saying, I'm being outcome driven and I'm losing the family. So for managers it's really important that we get them back into managing their staff and holding their staff alongside managing the outcomes that they need. So I think there has to be an element of the two. So some staff consultation before the managers training is really, really important. And I do think staff managers need re-energising again as much as the staff do.
Okay. Hope that was useful, Diane. I'm just going to come on to the last couple of slides, which talk about just a range of training. I'm not going to talk to you much about our training, but just to let you know that we provide lots of open training. We choose the big issues. So at the moment, we think that the big issues in the country are some of those core concepts of engagement, communication skills, and so then we'll run them on an open basis throughout the country, at the moment in London and Birmingham, but happy to talk to you if you need them more locally. Again, we do lots of skills-based training, as we've talked about. So we've also got a couple of e-learning programs, one around eco maps, Family Star, genograms, tools to work with families, and we know that that's really important. The tools, how to use them, when to use them, how to make them interactive with families and engaging with families, rather than just giving you a sheet of paper that talks about it. So we try and bring that to life with examples and video clips of how to use them. And again, the last one on what is effective family intervention, what does that mean in terms of the skills for the worker. So two that I think are quite relevant to what we've been talking about today. Of course, we'd be happy to talk to you. Have a look at our website, and please do contact us on any of these methods. We've got a couple of info and training addresses and also a telephone number which we'd be very happy to talk to you on. So there's just one last thing that I'd like to say. Actually two, sorry. One is I've got a survey and it takes about 2 minutes, and I wouldn't mind if you would just spend that 2 minutes to tell us whether it's been useful, because obviously we spend a bit of time preparing and running these, and I'd like to know if that's actually useful for you, or if there's anything else different that you wanted from it or want from it in the future. And finally, I'd just like to take the opportunity on behalf of myself and Claire to say thank you very much for joining us today. I hope that you found it interesting and informative, and please contact us if you'd like to either work with us or you want to have a chat about any training needs. Thank you very much indeed for coming, and goodbye.